Busy, I guess, is the best way to describe it. That's how a lot of people describe my life. Is they're like, you have to be extremely busy, and I do have a lot on my plate. Building a business, have obviously doing well with football, and I'm married and all that other stuff. That you can throw in there and add into that life that I live. But it's a busy life. I more so I don't really look at it as, oh my gosh, I'm busy. I'm extremely blessed to have as many things as I do going on, and God has sustained me through all of that and allowed me to be able to do it. So definitely busy, a lot of things to juggle. But I've been given everything I need to be able to do that. I have a great coaching staff around us that allows me to do what I do on the entrepreneurship side. Some programs I don't know what that would look like at another program and what their views and thoughts would be on that kind of stuff. And I'm where I'm supposed to be, and the coaches are extremely supportive of what I do. So my life is just busy. I'm not a guy that I always talk to other entrepreneurs about this, is they try to like pack their schedules. I try to unpack my schedule, and I try to eliminate the things that don't need to be there so that I can focus on what needs to be done. And that's really what my life looks like, is figuring out what my priorities are and then removing things that aren't. So things I have to sacrifice, but just busy overall.
Knowing what you know now, how would you have done things
I
different?
have two answers to that. I would say a lot, because the other answer wouldn't be great for you. But there's not a lot I would change in the fact of I like the failures as brought us to where we're at. Every failure that we have tripped and stumbled over on our way to where we're at now is the reason we're where we're at. I think if you grew up and you never had hardship and you never dealt with things, you wouldn't have much. You wouldn't have many values. You wouldn't have much character. You wouldn't have the calluses on your hands. In a sense, is how I like to word it. So we've been able, just through this process of just failing and learning, to be able to use that and learn. But overall, I think validating a lot faster and quicker. We have just gotten so much better at the process. We're going through our third pivot right now, and how fast we're doing this and testing it compared to what we did the first two times, which we thought were really fast, is unbelievable. So just testing things faster, and just moving the timeline faster. I think that's one thing that we do really well. I have a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs that are similar boats of me, of college student, or maybe just out of college, so they're on the younger side. And it seems that we are moving fast, but we could move a lot faster. So I'd say that would be the thing, that if I could go back, move a lot quicker, save ourselves some resources that we didn't have to spend, whether it's time, money, energy. But overall, just moving quicker, validating quicker.
What was the answer you didn't want to give me?
The answer is that I wouldn't do it over, or not wouldn't do it over again. I wouldn't change anything. Like I said, I just, the failures is part of it. People try to avoid it over and over again. They think it's the worst thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I failed. That's actually like what we look for, is like, how do we fail this, right? Because if it didn't fail, then it worked, right? It's like it's the Thomas Edison quote. I just found 1,000 ways it didn't work. And that's really what I think entrepreneurship is, and a lot of people try to avoid it. I think that's also why it's not meant for everybody, because failure has been ingrained in our minds since we were young. Going to a school is like, if you fall out of line, you're wrong. If you fail this test, you're wrong. Like all of these things. And I was fortunate enough to fail tests all the time, so I got practice from an early age. But the failures are what makes you, and those tough moments and the things that you have to persevere through. I think I know this because of a Harvard study, but I've been a huge advocate for the word grit as a that's the one thing. And Harvard did a study on it. They're like, what is the one key component? What's that one trait that contributes to success? And it wasn't anything other than grit. And I believe that wholeheartedly. It's something that you just learn over time, and you just become like this callous human being of like, I know how I am tough. I know how to go through these things, and I wouldn't change it. I grew up in a household that we were like forced to be callous in a sense. My dad was, from a young age, we were working. I always tell people, I didn't, other than college football playoffs on one day out of the year, I never watched college football growing up, because Saturdays were our work days. I'd play Friday night football, and I'd wake up on a Saturday early in the morning. We would work from pretty much sun up to sundown. We were waiting for our mom to be like, it's dinner time, and my dad would be like, no, we got some stuff we got to finish up. Like my dad, it was nonstop. And we all hated it at the time. I got four brothers. We're all working outside. He ripped the heating out of our house, so we had a wood burning stove. We were splitting wood on weekends. If we had a Saturday game, that sucked, because you would work on Saturday and then you would work until you had to leave. Like, there was no, you weren't hanging out with friends. You weren't skipping Saturday work. It was your home working on Saturdays. And, it wasn't like, that was our rent, in a sense of, you earn your stay in a sense. But it was one of the best things he ever taught us, was how to work. I think this generation lacks a lot of that, of the hard work. Again, it's just, there's no there's no perseverance, and I saw it in my own friends' lives. I'm fortunate enough to have some friends that work the same way I did, so we related really well. As we didn't hang out on weekends or anything, but it's just this over time, you learn how to get through things, and then the next thing that you thought would be really tough isn't as tough because you kind of build a tolerance for it, and then you get to a startup where you spent the year and a half building a company that you just pivoted for the third time, and it's like, all right, we're good, let's keep rolling. You need that type of mentality, and I again, that's why I say I wouldn't change anything. I just continue to fail the way we have been, and maybe do it a little bit smarter. But other than that, I wouldn't avoid the failure.
What do you see now trending with college athletes and high school athletes, if not jumping into the world of entrepreneurship or solopreneurship?
Honestly, I would say I see two things. A lot of people don't believe that they can do it. Number one is like people look at my life and instead of being like, how could I do that too? It's more of like I can just never do that, and they're wrong. I think a lot of athletes are built to be entrepreneurs because of again this culture that they grew up in this culture of you have to figure out how to fail because there's 60 plays in the game. You think every single one of them is going to be perfect. Have you ever heard of a quarterback that's never thrown an interception? Have you heard of a quarterback that hasn't thrown an incompletion, right? There's failures that are going to come along the way. You have to figure out, okay, I have to overcome, and by the next play, which is 20 seconds later, 40 at a max, you have to figure out how to bounce back and just remove it from your mind and figure out how to advance. So I think athletes are great. They make great entrepreneurs because of this. They have this natural grit to them. But I would say the other side is this is particularly in my opinion in high school is the glamorization of entrepreneurship. I think people love the word entrepreneurship. So like I think that is the buzz is the word entrepreneur. I think that kids hear like I'm an entrepreneur, I live free, and all this stuff is life. If I can travel wherever I want, do what I want. There's obviously that level to it. That takes years to get to. Most cases takes years of just constant failing and just things just not working. And I think as this entrepreneur mindset that people have is like they see it from Instagram, which is Instagram is just the best version of everybody's lives. I could probably make a really good highlight reel of my life too and make it look like I'm doing great, but there's things that we deal with all the time. So I think there's this like misconception that entrepreneurship is like a extremely glamorized life. And it's not meant for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people think it is meant for them because they just want the outcome rather than what the input that it takes to get to that outcome. So I think there's just like a glamorization there. I think it's just social media in itself. It's the job of social media, glamorize everybody else's life. And I think, what actually happens is you get into it and you're like, holy crap, I didn't realize it was going to be like this. So, it's definitely been glamorized over the past few years. And I think that's a huge misconception. In the younger years in like high school, I would say college, you start to get a little bit more practical and reality starts to set in a little bit.
Entrepreneurship, you can't teach it. Number one, you can teach how to start a business. You can't teach entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship, to your point, it's earned. Like that title is earned. Like when you're not just supporting yourself, when you're supporting other people and other people with families and people that are older than you sometimes and sustaining that where you have people on payroll, that's real entrepreneurship. When you're laying there on a Thursday night wondering how you can make payroll tomorrow, right? That's entrepreneurship.
I talk about that. We were in that situation not too long ago. We're fortunate now we have funding in, but we were at the same situation. I'm like sitting there. I'm like, ooh, it's gonna be tight. And it's just like part of it. And I think entrepreneurship is so again glamorized, and the reality is if you're the founder of the company, work is cut out for you because you deal with the worst of everything. Your job is to. It doesn't matter how big the company is. It doesn't matter if there's two guys, you're just yourself, or if there's 20 guys. Your job as a founder is to deal with pretty much the crappiest problems there is because you're the founder. And I think like a lot of people don't realize that until they get into it. And like you said, it's not teachable, and neither is grit, right? It's just something you have to like experience over time, and you cultivate yourself and you evolve into this gritty person, and it takes experience. And I always think that's like a hard truth that people don't want to hear is like the truth is like they're like, well, what's one thing that you need to like start a business? And I say grit, and they're like, well, how do I get that? I'm like, unfortunately, it's going to take time. And it doesn't mean you can't start now, but again, it means when you fail, you have to just keep going. Grit is earned through perseverance. Is how I say it. That's the only way you get to grit is through perseverance, going through the tough crap, going through the good stuff, right, and understanding how to do it again, right. But also going through a lot of the crap and then figuring out how to get back on your feet and dust yourself off when all your friends are telling you you're nuts for doing this. When when you talk to a VC and they're like, dude, this idea sucks. We're not, we won't back you. Like, this is not even, you should maybe go a different direction. Why don't you just get a job? Right. There's all these things that people are going to tell you. You have to overcome even just those things on the mental side, as well as the company itself, which again, just not teachable.
What are the things that you see as benefits down the road for any student athlete to start a business right now while they're in school? So what's the end result for a lot of them, even if it doesn't, even if the startup is not successful?
You're in college as a student, which means either in my situation, maybe you're a football player, maybe you're an athlete, you're on a scholarship, right? Maybe you're on an academic scholarship. Maybe your parents are just paying for you, right? You're learning in a sense on somebody else's dollar, and you have the ability to fail, and you're still going to have a dorm room. You're still going to have, your parents that are okay with, helping you out and all this stuff. You have just so much leeway versus the second you're out. Now you have bills. People don't tell you this, life is extremely expensive, right? Is you got bills, you got medical, you got car payments, you got on top of car payments, you got car insurance, you got life insurance, you got renter's insurance, you got to deal with your lease, then you got, your the landlord, you got to deal with them, right? There's all these things that pop up in your life, and it's like it just gets so difficult to want to start it. And then you get married, right? And you start having kids, right? And now you need diapers, right? And then now it's like, all right, well, we don't have enough money for diapers, right? It's just, why don't I just take the steady job, right? Why don't I take the job that is easy and so you almost, in a sense, you completely flip the script, in a sense of, you just come from this like complete support system underneath of you of like, it doesn't matter how hard the floor is only so low. And then once you get out, the floor just drops a lot. So you have a lot more responsibility beyond this. So I've been fortunate. I started, my entrepreneurship journey, I always say it started around 11, started before that. I used to make ornaments and sell them when I was a kid at family holiday events, and I would make metal light bulbs. And you can make reindeer out of them. You can make penguins. It's actually pretty cool. My parents still have them. We still hang them up, but like those things of like, I started that and I was really young, and I did it with my brother. I convinced him to help me paint, and, we would go to Five Below and get stuff. We would go to, TJ Maxx and get anything we could. But, I started my first company, or quote unquote company, when I was 11, which was a board game. And I built that. And you want to talk about grit? It took me 4 years to get to an actual prototype because I just couldn't afford it. So I was building it and building it and building it. I still have the prototypes. It was built on a Cocoa Puff cereal box. I cut it out, designed it, all this stuff. And then I worked for my dad, not on Saturdays because I didn't get paid for that, but on my own time, I would work for him, and I would make, pennies on the dollar because I wasn't worth much anyways with how much work I could do. But I would make money, and I would go to, what I did was I went to Staples, and I actually built a 2x2 board out of foam. I could get it printed on there, and they could, make it for you. So I got it blown up in this huge board so I could see it and like start to put stuff together. And then when I continued to work, and then I got involved with manufacturers and all that stuff, and I had no clue what I was doing in any of it. But again, it's like, if I failed, what does it matter? I'm 11 years old or 14 or 15 years old by the time I get to the end of it. It's like, okay, I'll go back to my math class. Like there wasn't, it wasn't like everything was going to fall underneath of me. And then, now I get to college and I am married, and, I have responsibility outside of football. But again, it's still like I'm on a scholarship. I don't have, we don't have debt. We don't, like, we've been smart with our money. I met her when this is actually towards the end of when I was building a board game, but I was 15 or 14. She was 15 when I met her. And like, we knew we were getting married young, right away. So we were like, hey, let's be smart with our money. Let's save money now. And then when we get married, we'll be all right. So like, we have still have the support system of like, I still have football. I still have these things, and, we're able to provide for our family. But again, it's like, once we start to have kids and they come in the equation, that's going to change things. So it makes it, in most people's minds, I would say it makes it harder to take risk. I am an extremely risk-oriented person. And my wife knows that. One thing that she just is like, all right, I got, I'll back you in that. So, it's just like this like risk factor that as you get older and the more responsibility you take on, it becomes harder to be able to, convince yourself or others to take a risk. Why now is the best time is, there's a saying, it's like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. Right. So that's kind of like the mentality you have to take is, you may be scared and you think you're going to fail. You actually are. I can tell you that right now. You're going to fail. Why not do it now? And like, it's like a numbers game. I always tell people, it's like, it really is just a numbers game. If you have to fail, right? If a startup takes 100 attempts, right? It's like what, 9 out of 10 startups fail, right? If it takes 10 startups, imagine if you started failing right now. and 10 years, 10 years from now, you're onto your 10th company. Let's call it that, right? Versus you start when you're 25 or you're 30 when you think you have everything figured out, or 40 years old, right? How much longer does that curve take? It's this compound effect. I have failed more than most people will ever fail in their lives, and I'm only 20 years old, right? And I managed to do that over a short period of time. So I mean, been able to be a few steps ahead of everybody else in a sense. And, I definitely think a lot differently than most people. The earlier you can start, the better. And you're going to fail. It's going to be part of it. Accept that. Learn to enjoy failure, and take like joy in it, of understanding that instead of, oh my gosh, I failed, it's, oh my gosh, I figured out a way that didn't work. Now what's next, right? So, yeah, there's like that risk factor that I think as a young person, and then on top of that, just like compound over time. You're going to collect interest on what you learn. So
What is that advice that you say, hey, if you have an idea, here are the 3 or 4 steps that you need to take that idea with the people and resources around you while you're in school and launch it?
So first thing I always say is brain dump. That's the first thing. You get an idea, you need to brain dump. A lot of what you think in your head, right? You probably have told somebody a joke before and you go, oh my gosh, that sounded way better in my head, right? Is take the idea from your head and get it on paper, right? I always say I like to write it out and not type it out, because there's this like art of like writing, and you're like, wait, hold on a minute, and then I'm gonna erase it. And so what I did when I first started Athlete Squared, and really I do this every company, but Athlete Squared was really memorable because I was in the dorm rooms at Villanova, and in the lobby they had 3 giant whiteboards, and I filled them front and back with Athlete Squared. It does not, those, if you would read that right now, you wouldn't even have the blueprint to Athlete Squared because it's so different now. But again, I just wrote it and dumped everything out. And as I start to write, I would be like, that dude, Tanner, that makes no sense. What the heck? That doesn't make sense. Erase that. But this makes more sense, right? This doesn't make sense, and why, right? And you always have to ask that question: why not? Doesn't make sense. All right, well, why? Okay, what can we do better, right? And one of the things that just coincidentally happened was another football player. He's actually a quarterback, came same class as me. He walks out, and there's a couch right in front of where I'm doing it because it's the lobby area, and I'm like brain dumping. He's like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, I got an idea. I'm just gonna like lay it all out here. And he just sat there. I don't even think he said a word, and I just started explaining it to him. And then once I started explaining it, I was like, no, hold on, never mind. That actually doesn't make any sense, even though I thought it did when I wrote it there. So brain dumping, I think, is the first stage. Get it all out there, and talk to people about it. Let them shoot you down, right? And the thing is like when you have an idea, you're usually defensive about it, which is like in a sense, early stage is a good thing, right? It's like because it forces you to think why they're wrong, and then you're going to figure out and be honest with yourself of like, either you're going to prove them wrong or they were right. And now you're like, okay, wait, hold on. I got to change my idea around. So I think first step, brain dump, and really get it out there. And like on top of brain dump, you dump it all out there and you think you have it, start talking to people. That's like the next stage, is just talking to people. I was at a networking event yesterday, and I've been running this company for over 2 years now. And I explained it yesterday, probably the best way I've ever explained it. And it took me 2 years to get there. I remember like I literally said it and I was like, oh my gosh, that is a great way to explain it. And it was just me over and over again, taking these reps. So first thing is get the idea out there. I think the biggest problem is actually taking the idea and then actually taking the jump. The hard part is like diving off, and there's a saying, it's like you not jumping into the pool doesn't make the water any warmer, right? Like it's going to be the same temperature whether you jump in now or in a month from now or a year from now. So just jump in. And I think just accept failure. I talked about that a little bit already, is understand that you're going to fail, and that's part of the process. It's not the end of the process. Right. And so your idea now, whether you believe it or not, it's not going to be what it is in a month from now. It's definitely not going to be what it's going to be in a year from now. And down the line, it's not. Like, it just, Amazon started as a bookstore, right? Like, people don't, know that kind of stuff, right? Shopify, right, was not what it was supposed to be. What it was actually for skis and stuff. What's another one? Discord. Like, Discord was supposed to be, it was actually a gaming, or Slack, which is like this huge professional. It was actually just a thread on a video game. And they ended up figuring out that was the best thing that they had at their whole entire, game that they built. The best feature was their messaging. And they end up turning that into Slack, which is now, $1 billion+ company. So your idea is not going to be the same now as it is tomorrow as it will be in a year. So understanding that there's this evolution of your product. And I think the best advice I could give is fall in love with the problem, not the solution, which is a great book that I always recommend to entrepreneurs. And I would actually say that's a great first step. Hold on, look, ready? I got the book with me. I carry it literally. It's awesome because it literally goes through every stage of starting a business and from front to back. So the startup journey. And the first thing it talks about is failures, but embrace disruptions, operate in phases, fundraising, managing investors, firing and hiring, understanding your user, product market fit, making money, how to get to 1 billion users, go global, the exit. It goes through every stage. And I think as as a founder and somebody that starts a business, you need to know every stage before you get there, at least have an idea. But this book is phenomenal. It was written by the founder of Waze. He's a 2-time $1 billion+ exit guy, and he talks about it. He's just a good guy in general. I think he's a phenomenal entrepreneur, and I listen to a lot of his stuff, and he's just like a down to earth kind of guy. But the book is phenomenal because a lot of people fall in love with their idea so much that they don't think about the end user who is using your product, and you fall in love with this idea that you have built in this product. And so you don't really care as much about your users, where it's got to be the other way around. You need to build this product because you want to serve a user. And when the user comes to you with critiques or feedback, you need to take that. And that's why we're under a third pivot is just, again, we got more and more feedback, and now we just pivoted again, right? And it's not what I originally thought the idea was, which at one point I'd say I was in love with the idea. And I very quickly snapped out of it, understanding, okay, I need to serve people. And that's the goal of what I'm building. So building it for them makes a lot more sense. So first step, brain dump, take the jump, and fall in love with the problem rather than the solution would be my advice. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. I always say I'm like an old man stuck in a young man's body, but again, it's like this. The earlier you can start, the better.
All right, Grandpa. Last question.